I recently pulled an ab muscle, which is great because I had no idea I had an ab muscle. Mac Engel, Fort Worth Star Telegram, Engel podcast here on the Sunset Lounge. Wonderful guest for this episode, a guy who at one time, more than 20 years ago, was one of the best basketball players in the state of Texas. And for fans of college basketball, and specifically high school basketball, they will certainly remember this name. And he's one of those names that you'll say, oh, I remember that guy. He was really, really good. What happened to him? And what happened to this guy is what happens to a lot of top basketball players who realize they can do much better playing overseas internationally than they can trying to find a job in the NBA. His name is Willie Warren. Willie Warren was one of the best basketball players growing up when he attended North Crowley High School, where he graduated from in 2008. He went on to play 2 seasons at the University of Oklahoma, including his freshman year, where he was a teammate of future NBA superstar Blake Griffin. And when Willie was a freshman on that team, the Sooners reached the Elite Eight in the NCAA tournament before they eventually lost to North Carolina. Willie Warren came back for his sophomore season, where unfortunately he suffered a myriad of injuries. And then at that time, he decided to turn professional. 2008, he was a 2010 rather. He was a second-round draft pick of the Los Angeles Clippers, achieving a lifelong dream. He was the 54th overall pick. He played 1 season with the Clippers before he decided to go out and make his way playing overseas. And since then, he has played for the following, but not every team is on this list that he's played for: Rio Grande, in Israel, Hungary, Italy, China, Iran, back to China, Lebanon, Mexico, Taiwan, Qatar, Venezuela, Iraq, and Kuwait. Also sprinkled then there were a couple of runs on G League teams here in the United States, including the Texas Legends in Frisco, Texas. Among many of Willie's achievements include he was a McDonald's All-American in high school. He was a Parade All-American in high school. He was the 2008 number 10 player in the nation. And he was also Mr. Basketball in the state of Texas. That's a really fun interview with a guy who I haven't talked to in a long, long time. And this interview was actually recorded last season. But I did it around to make it current. Please welcome my guest, Mr. Willie Warren. Do you remember the last time I talked to you?
You mentioned around the Clipper days, I think you said, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that was
It was your
long. That's almost 20 years, not quite, but we getting close to that.
So you were in your rookie season with the Clippers, and I had interviewed you outside the locker room at the American Airlines Center. And yeah, I don't think you were really happy at that particular point in your life. Is that a correct assessment?
A little bit of both. Happy about being finally somewhere that I always wanted to be, but not happy about as much playing time as I was getting.
Yeah, and that's what I want to get into. So, Willie, I've written down just a whole bunch of questions.
No problem.
So you as a basketball expert can answer all of these. So take me back to when you were a kid. You're a good basketball player. And I'm assuming you got into the AAU system. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So you don't know any better, and you're just doing what I'm assuming the adults tell you is the best way to get to college and then eventually the NBA. Now that you're 20 years removed from it and you can look back on that system, the AAU system, what do you think of it now as an adult?
To be honest with you, I'm done now, so I'm starting to get more engaged in the AAU system now to where I can give you a great answer to what you just asked. To be honest with you, I think the AAU system was much better then than it is now.
What changed?
At least in my area, being in the biggest, I feel like, market in America outside of, at the time, the East Coast, which is New York and California, it was Texas, because of how big our population is. It wasn't as many teams as there is now. Now it's 50, 60 teams. That organization maybe has 10, 12 teams. And I just think it's kind of watered down to where you can come to a gym and see what you want to see all in one gym. Back in my day, we had the Derrick Roses, Eric Gordons, and all those guys in one at the Peach Jam. But where now, personally, though, I would have took a more Damian Lillard approach, Jason Tatum approach. I was kind of well spoken, so it kind of affected the way certain people thought, about me. I was more like Russell Westbrook, Anthony Edwards, how outspoken they are. I had a couple of stories with Kobe Bryant and LeBron camp and stuff. And I don't think it carried well, when I eventually made it to, exactly where I wanted to get, which was the NBA.
What happened when you say you had stories at the Kobe camp or LeBron James camp? What happened in those instances that you said you don't think they carried well?
Just the Kobe camp where we had an instance where I was just being funny with him, competitor, and the media took it as, oh, this guy isn't humble.
Uh,
He's grades disrespectfully. And then, I was raised by my mom, who was a very, very, very competitive woman, Hall of Famer at Langston University, did great things in high school
yep.
basketball. And she didn't take pictures with women, who were competitive with them. So at the LeBron camp, I didn't take a picture with LeBron. And, they took that. That was coming from the Kobe. So, they put two and two together, and I just had a bad name with that, moving forward. And if I could change that, I would have took that picture with LeBron. I wouldn't have said anything competitive to Kobe, to where they could even, take it as disrespect.
When you go back and you look at all of your achievements, and I've written down a few of them. This is when you were in high school. Texas Mr. Basketball, McDonald's All-American, Parade All-American. I mean, anything that you could pretty much achieve as a high school player, you did it. So now you could go virtually, I'm assuming, anywhere to college to play basketball. You chose the University of Oklahoma. What was it about OU that made you said, I'm going to Norman?
It was two things, three. Close to home, being one. And I was recruited by a guy named Aronde Teleferro. He was at Arkansas, and Arkansas had let go of their whole staff. And, real close with Aronde. I really liked how he handled recruiting me. He was always there, small tournament, big tournament, didn't matter, always hands-on with whenever they were able to contact me. He made sure that he followed the regards to, make sure he was able to do that. I went to Oak Hill. He took trips to Oak Hill. So, I really I felt comfortable with him, wherever he was, I felt like, I'd be in good hands. And, when he got fired, he asked me, he was like, about a couple schools. I was like, Miami's a little far. He was like, okay, Oklahoma. And I was like, is Blake gonna stay? He was like, yeah. I was like, do it.
So when, now that you're removed from it as a player, I know you're probably consumed as a fan what we in the media sometimes hear about the recruiting process, especially of players who are as good as you were coming out of high school, which is it's dirty, kids are being offered all this money. And this was before NIL and any of those opportunities existed above the table. Willie, you lived it. Were all those stories and perceptions true of recruiting top high school athletes?
I'm pretty sure. My mom was very hands-on with my recruitment though, so she didn't play that game. She wanted to make sure that my eligibility was clean cut. We had no problems, no issues when it come to being eligible. So she didn't play those games. She made it very upfront to organize schools that I went to in high school, colleges, university, all of that. She made it clear cut, like, hey, we're doing this the right way. So we didn't play that game, but you heard your stories, and as far as like gear from shoes like Nike and stuff like that, like
Yeah.
yeah, the Nike organization. So, it wasn't like I was being recruited to Nike. It was like I played with a Nike team my whole life with Team Texas, and they took care of all their players, and they was under their branch. So stuff like that, yeah. But as far as just under the table money, my mom didn't play those games. But you heard the stories.
So, Willie, when you're in high school and you're playing on the top teams in Texas, the AAU teams, and you're on a great high school team. North Carolina is one of the best teams in the last 20 years in Texas. You played against great players, and you were a great player. Who did you play against before you got to the NBA and you became a professional? Willie, who did you play against that made you stop and say, holy God, this guy can play?
It was two guys, and that was one reason why I got hands-on at the perfect time with my son in the AAU world. He's in the 6th grade, and this is when 5th grade, I got out into AAU nationals and got to see outside of Texas basketball. It was two guys. First guy I seen in about 5th, 6th grade was Brandon Jennings, and Tyreek Evans was in that mix
That's good.
with me. Like, Tyreek was just that big guard,
Mhm.
and the ability, you could see it, but Brandon had that Sebastian Telfair flair to him from the West Coast, street ball, and it was just like, this kid can go. Yeah, them classification, them two guys to me was just like Brandon at 5th and Drew Holiday. I was like, if I want to be these are gonna be the seniors that I'm competing against.
So, Willie, when you were 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and you're getting an idea that you're good, like good, who told you, or did you figure it out on your own that you were exceptional, that that you could do something with basketball? Because I've met a ton of guys, you've met a ton of guys who think I'm going to go to college, I'm going to go to the league, whatever else, but you had the talent to actually do it. Did somebody tell you that, or did you kind of figure it out on your own that you were blessed with sort of next level skills?
A little bit of multiple things. Kind of like the kids today, I paid attention to rankings, and it's funny because I don't want my son to. It's more because of how everything is on the media nowadays, so it can just really drive you insane when you just instantly looking at. It was different for us. We just go to hoop scoop, Texas round ball. That's really all we had. See what you are and keep it pushing. Um, when I finally became number one in 9th grade, I was like, okay, but I knew what would come with that, and, my mom kind of laid back off of me a little bit. She wasn't on me as much. And we used to get our butts kicked by this team called the Dallas Wildcats and the Houston Hoops all the time. And once we finally started being the ones giving the butt whoopings, I was pretty good because we didn't all. It was me, Rodney Clark, and we had Chris Babb. Other than that, we had a bunch of underclassmen, who my AAU coach filled with what he thought we needed. A Jackson Jeffcoat who ended up going to play defensive end at University of Texas. Guys like that just come in and be physical, rebound, and give the ball to me and Rodney, who arguably is one of the best shooters I've ever played with.
Willie, you played high school basketball with Jackson Jeffcoat for
Uh,
AEU ball? I didn't. I'm not surprised. I mean, he was an amazing athlete at UT. Could he have been? And I know one thing I've learned in my years doing this. You meet a lot of football players who are frustrated basketball players, right? I'm sure you've met a ton of them. Oh, I could have played basketball. Why didn't you? Could Jackson Jeffcoat have played Division I basketball?
Man, I didn't even know he was as good as he was in football until somebody told me he was going to University of Texas. I was like, what? That was AU basketball. That was my center. He was perfect for me.
So you get to University of Oklahoma, and you're paired with the eventual number one overall pick in the draft, Blake Griffin. And of course, I'd seen Blake play at Oklahoma, but you got to practice with him. Did you see him do anything, Willie, in practice that made you just say, who the hell is this guy? Because obviously the NBA is loaded with examples of stupid, incredible athletic plays that he made at the rim, above the rim, at the ceiling. Did he do any of that stuff in practice?
Practice. How about games? If you look in the Clippers like games, if you really got to look deep in the bench,
You're the
just naturally just like, and people are looking at me like, oh, you used to this, huh? I'm like, yeah, he did this all the time in college. The most amazing thing to me that he did wasn't even a dunk on somebody or in game. We were doing our vertical test in practice, and Coach Capo had us put like stickers on our hands and So you could see where he touched the top of the backboard. I was like, his brother wasn't too far off, but he literally only thing he would have had to do was grab it if he wanted to, but he lit
Wow.
the backboard.
So you spent 2 seasons at Oklahoma. You obviously had great years. And I had read, Willie, that you contemplated coming out after your freshman year and declaring for the draft then, but elected to come back for one more season. What made you decide to stay another year as opposed to coming out?
I wanted to be number one. That was my whole thing. I was like, man, it was how I felt it. I had been doing this so long, playing against these guys for so long. It was nothing I haven't seen. So I really felt like staying healthy, I could have had that chance to not be a number 14, but top 5.
So when you look back on it now, wearing, hindsight's 2020 glasses, was it the right decision to go back?
I mean, technically, no, but I don't live off regret. I have kids now, so you live and you learn, and I enjoyed my time to the fullest at Oklahoma. I enjoyed playing with Jeff Capel, meeting the people that I met, and enduring the things that I did at OU. So no, I wish I would have stayed 2 more.
So, Willie, one thing that we've seen now, it used to be, I think you're old enough to appreciate this. It used to be you'd have a college player, and he really identified with one program, right? Just one program because he was there 3, maybe 4, maybe even 5 years at one place, and he really became, or she became, a part of that community forever, right? Well, now players, they're gone after a year. They're playing for 3 different schools, et cetera. Do you think a player in this era can have the bond with the university the way the previous generations did because they didn't have any choice, they had to stay?
Nope, and that's funny you said that. I literally just made this comment like 2 days ago. Because they was talking about a couple guys and in the portal season just ended, and I was just like, as far as chemistry and camaraderie, I was like, as a team, like, I was like, I don't know if I would have been able to just for 4 straight years go and have to, mesh and bond with people because that's hard, especially when you're trying to gain players' trust. Like, oh, this guy, he just trying to come in here and get a bag and leave, and this guy just trying to, all he care about is himself and who. Like, that's just, I know there's guys out there. I ain't finna get this guy the ball, or if he miss a couple shots because they feel like, that stuff does go into players' heads for sure.
So you played at Oklahoma for 2 seasons. Do you feel like you're a part of that community?
In somewhat, I think it's more so attached to Blake Griffin, and that team that we had, because that was a great team. I think we
Mhm.
4 and 5 maybe. So, as far as that team, yeah, but I was there a year and a half, got up out of there, and I've only been back like because Jeff Capel left like
Mhm.
I've only been back like once. I met the new coach literally last year because I just came back last year from Kuwait and I went up there to try to talk to them guys about finishing my degree so I can get into coaching.
So I've told this to people, and you can speak to it a lot better than I can, which is fans will say, well, why isn't this player or that player supporting their alma mater, their school? And I said, because in my experience, what I've learned is players commit more to the coach or maybe a member of the coaching staff than they do the school or the program. And if that coach or that assistant coach leaves, then their tie to that school is kind of gone. Am I right or wrong on that?
In my opinion, I
Yeah.
think that's kind of how I feel. Definitely how I feel. Not kind of. When Jeff Capel left, I'm still a Boomer Sooner though. Oklahoma, where I went, they gave me the chance to play on a big stage. So Jeff Capel and them recruited me, but at the end of the day, Oklahoma had to, give that stamp like, okay, we'll allow this player to come in here and, represent us. So I'm still Boomer Sooner to this day, but definitely, I think it's a little different for me than it would be for Blake being from Oklahoma, going to school and only doing years. That's his blood, that's where he's from, that's where he played. So opposed to me from Texas, when I tell somebody from Texas I went to OU, I get looks.
You're drafted in the second round by the LA Clippers. Take me to draft day, Willie. Was that a sad, hard day for you, or was it exciting because you were drafted by an NBA franchise?
Man, I was ecstatic. I just wanted to get in there. That was always my dream. When I was a kid, I didn't write be the number one pick, be the first round pick. It was make it to the NBA. So them, making sure my name was called, I'll forever be grateful of the Los Angeles Clippers and who drafted me there. Neil Doherty, he'll always be remembered for sure.
And I hear this a lot, is that unless you were really a top 3 pick, yeah, top 3, maybe even top 2,
Mm.
the hardest adjustment for a great college player like you were to the NBA is understanding you're not going to play for a little bit. That
Yep.
you got to wait your turn.
I
And
remember Rasul Butler about that.
what did he say?
He said it would be tough, and he just used to try to tell me to keep my head and rest in peace him, but he don't know that he scared me more than ever because I really truly believed in my God-given ability. I think he blessed me, to be as good as he did. And when Rasul used to tell me the stories of how good he was at LaSalle, and when he got to the NBA, they tried to make him 3-and-D, and that terrified me. It was like a nightmare. I was like, man, I don't want that to happen to me.
So did anybody say, or did you see anything? Because I saw a story once Steve Kerr was talking about when he was a rookie during the preseason. He sat at the end of the bench and he said, I am scared to death. Because he's like, I know I can't play with these guys. He's like, I know it. And this is Steve Kerr, a guy who carved out a nice NBA career as a 3-point shooter. Willie, did you have any moments in practice or in preseason or in any of those games where you're sitting at the end of the bench thinking, I don't know if I can play with these guys?
I used to play one-on-one with guys and give guys the blues in practice. I used to give them the blues, go out there and see them. I'm like, yeah, I just need to wait. Just be patient. Just kept telling myself that, and then came into my second year in some little events where I just felt like I just was going down the same path as the year before after being promised this, that, and I just couldn't do it again.
Okay, so I heard a story about you, and you can tell me if this is true or not. The story was you're at the end of the bench, your rookie season with the Clippers. I don't know what game it was, but the game was out of hand, right? It's a 20-point deficit. Vinny Del Negro, do you know the story I'm getting ready to tell you? Okay. So Vinny Del Negro is your coach, and there's like 50 seconds, maybe 60 seconds to go in the game. And Vinny says, Willie, go on in. Now it's a blowout. And you said, no, I'm not going in. I'm not, I don't even know what you said, but you passed on the opportunity to play, and that it really soured Vinny on you. Is that story true?
It is, but it's more to the story than that. But that's definitely true. It's 100% true. But it was more so, uh, you know, I feel like I was being tested, so I didn't think Benny was on my side anyway. He always did stuff that made me be like, this guy don't like me. I was drafted before he was the coach, so I think it was a situation. Then he asked about me, and like I told you, the stories growing up, he heard stories, so it was like, all right, I'm good with Bledsoe and Farouk, the two guys. And so we came into an instance that game, and the game before, he was like, we were playing Sacramento Kings. He was like, come on, guys, let's get up 20 points so we can get guys like Willie Warren and Brian Cook in the game. And I was just like, what? And so then we come to this game and we're getting killed. And Baron Davis was like, hey, Willie, I'm finna tell coach to put you in. I was like, man, don't do that. I was like, if he want to put me in, he'll put me in. I was like, don't go tell coach to put me in. He's like, man, I got you. I got you. I got you. So then Benny doesn't even come tell me. Robert Pack, one of our assistant coach, comes down and is like, Willie, come on. I was like, man, no, I'm good. No, I ain't want a charity case. If coach wanted to put me in, he would have put me in. I didn't want to be the guy. Yeah, no.
Was it a mistake?
Yes, definitely. 100% it was definitely a mistake on my behalf.
So if you could go back and talk to your 20-year-old self who's an NBA rookie, and I'm sure you've talked to other guys now because you played professional basketball forever. What would you tell yourself or a guy who's a second round pick about ready to start an NBA career?
Told you early, I would have took the more Damian Lillard, Jason Tatum approach to the game. Never too high, never too low, which is a big motto for the NBA. And I was always too high, or I was always too low. When I was low, I was low. When I was high, I was the greatest guy in the world. Anybody, when I was good, when I was low, you could see it in body language and everything. Or just tell everybody, just never too high, never too low. You just gotta come with a cool, calm, collect demeanor at all times.
So when you say the Damian Lillard, Jason Tatum approach, educate me on that. What do you mean specifically by that kind of approach?
Dwayne Wade even have it, just that cool, calm demeanor. Like you never, when they're having a bad game or things aren't going their way, you wouldn't be able to tell if they had 40 points or 3 points. And that's where, I could have did a lot better. And I think, with that mindset and that mentality, when it comes to 50 seconds left in the game, you don't have no problem going in. You're just in enjoying the moment, living in the moment. And I feel like guys like Damian Lillard, Jason Tatum, Dwayne Wade, that's what those guys did. They just lived in the moment, regardless if it was good or bad.
Hello, it's Mike Reiner of Your Dark Companion here. Let me ask you, are you looking for something to fill the long dead air hours of your day? Well, join the Sunset Lounge DFW and Your Dark Companion on patreon.com, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Replace those sad, slow hours with sports, pop culture, music woven into interesting conversations. So step inside the green door, have a seat at the bar, and get in the groove with those shows and so very much more.
Willie, what made you decide? Because I'm looking at your career now, and because of the internet, I could see all the different places that you played: Israel, Hungary, Italy, China, Lebanon, China, Iran, Lebanon, Bakersfield, California, the Texas Legends, on and on. Did you at any point, because I've talked to guys in your position who said, you know what, I can make more money guaranteed playing overseas than I can necessarily at the end of an NBA bench. And I want to play. I'd rather do that than that. Was your decision to go overseas and do that based on I can get guaranteed minutes and guaranteed money over there, whereas I can't here?
100%. 100%. That's what it was about for me. It wasn't about the money. You can go make great, amazing money playing overseas, tax free, and play 35, 40 minutes a game. I wasn't the type, the good thing outside of the money, and I mean, playing near family, and, you have your clubs and your parties and your events. I was never much of a club or a party and event guy. I was basketball, I hang out at home.
Willie, when I've interviewed overseas players who played overseas, guys you probably played with, against with, usually one or two of them have, they usually have one or two horror stories from playing overseas, whether the team didn't give them a check. I know, talking to women's players who've played in Russia, if they miss free throws, sometimes that check isn't as big as it was promised to be because they missed shots. Maybe living accommodations aren't what they thought they were going to be. Maybe they get cut and they don't even know it. Maybe the coach is some drill sergeant and they have them practice. I remember talking to one guy, he practiced 6 hours a day. It was just insane. Of all the different places that you played, Willie, what were some of your crazier stories that are nothing like playing here in the United States?
Thankfully, I didn't endure into none of the financial problems, but that's a big thing overseas. Guys not getting paid or not receiving what they thought they were going to get. But for me, it was my very first year overseas, and I was perfectly fine, perfectly healthy. I had never flown 15 hours before and hopped off the plane and worked out right away, and never pavement. As soon as I land, we was running on pavement for like 2 miles and
Wait a minute. Where were you?
hungry. It
You
was
were in Hungary. Okay.
my first year overseas after Israel. I went to Israel first, then Hungary. So my IT band like swelled up on me. And so the coach tried to say I came hurt, and he was trying not to get he was trying to get the club to cut me. You got me this guy, because he came. I was hired by the club. The club brought me, then brought in you got me to a guy that was hurt and we don't need to pay him and blah, 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 and this and that and the third. So they made me play we had a scrimmage game, first scrimmage game coming up. And so I was good by the scrimmage game. Like a week went by, I was telling them, man, I was healthy before I came. This is just got me running on pavement. Like I haven't done this before. So they gave me up until the scrimmage game and I did good in the scrimmage and was back healthy by then. And, everything was well, but that was a big scare, flying 14 hours and a team the coach wanted to cut you because he think you came hurt and you're trying to disguise an injury and get a free check. And I'm like, what? Like, no, like, so that was my first scare, like, oof. And then in Israel, my first year, they had that war going on. So that was terrifying.
You say it's terrifying. What happened that scared the hell out of you?
The same thing that was just going on. I don't know if you've been seeing them with fella, and that's just been going on a long time. And I was in the middle of that. Like it just started up. They signed the treaty, I can't say the first peace treaty because it's been going on, but before they just started up this last time, I was there when they signed the peace treaty to finally stall it out until it just started up again.
So one thing that I know it's tough sometimes for an American player when they go overseas is that sometimes adjusting to the culture is really hard because sometimes you might be the only black person. There might only be 2 or 3 black people in the community. And I realize, you've lived in situations in America where you're probably accustomed to being the minority amongst minorities in certain situations. But over there, it's even more so. Did you run into anything culturally in any of those places where you lived where you're like, man, I really hate this. This is just.
Nah, because like I said, I'm really low key. Like I've never been much of the spotlight person. I like to like my mom. If you're gonna do something, do it at home. You can't get in trouble when you're at home. So that was always my thing. I was always a at home guy. So if you're a guy like that, it's hard to get in trouble in places and countries and catch yourself in the midst of stuff if you like that. So I've never really just was like, man, it's time to go home. Like I need to get out of here. Like, the only thing when I played in Iran, the area I was in, we lived in a cul-de-sac, and it was just like college all over. It didn't go out of the cul-de-sacs, so I didn't like that. But outside of that, everywhere I've been has been great.
So you experienced something most Americans in the last, since about, I guess, 1979, have been unable to live, and that is to go to Iran. You lived in Iran. I don't know if I've even met any. I've met 1 or 2 people who've been there. What was Iran? Because we have these perceptions of what Iran is like, Willie. What is it like?
Every time I come back, people are like, really? Iran was, especially Tehran.
Yeah.
Tehran, you can have a great time in Tehran. They got malls. The food in Iran is amazing. The whole Middle East, really, the food is amazing. I've been in the Middle East the last 7, 8 years of my career, and it's for a reason. So I love the Middle East. All the food all over is great. Iran, the food was great. Tehran, is very nice. So you can go to Tehran and have a great time, but most of other parts of Iran is mostly just the desert. So
Is there any place that you lived when I'm looking here? Because you played in Italy, which is obviously where former North Crowley star Keith Langford played and did very well for a long time. So Italy's a neat place, but you bounced around to China a couple places. I love that you lived in Bakersfield. Bakersfield is one of the biggest dumps I've ever seen. Those are my words, yours. But did you live in any place where you're like, that it was harder than others? Or were you able to adapt and make the best of it wherever you were?
Iran. I was there for the season. It was like 6, 7 months. It was my first year from China. So I went from China for like 3.5 years. And then I went to Iran to that cul-de-sac situation in Mashhad, and which is the hottest place in the world, or one of them, Mashhad, Iran. And I couldn't do it. I got up out of there in like a month and a half.
Well, wait a minute. You grew up in Texas, so you know how hot is. So if you're saying that place is hot, how hot was it?
Oh man. Because to me it's hotter now in Texas than it was when I grew up. So it's about how hot it gets now, but maybe a shade higher because it's a little drier. It sticks to you a little bit more. It's like, you can that throat get a little drier a little quick.
So explain this to me. If I understand this right, if you go overseas and play for a team in France or Italy, they pay you tax-free, right?
Correct.
They take care of your housing,
Right.
take care of your food,
No, depends. You might get a per diem, maybe, depending.
maybe.
Most part, especially like Italy, France, they'll pay you well enough to where, nah, we ain't paying you food. To
How about a car?
give you that too. No, just about everywhere overseas does all that for you.
So if you get all of that taken care of, Willie, were you able to save? I'm just going to make up numbers. Let's say they paid you $100,000. I don't know. Like I said, I'm making up a number. But if they paid you $100,000 and that's tax free, were you able to save like 70% of it? I mean, could you do that?
Now, if you get $100,000, you can leave from over there. Depending on the type of person you are, you can leave with at least 90. Depending on the length of the season and everything like that, that definitely comes into play because Asia is only like 5 to 6 months, where Europe is like 10. You go to Asia, Europe, you'll get that same 100, but stretch it over 10 months. The only difference is Europe don't respect some places like Asia and Middle East playing style. So if you
Oh.
leave up and go get that 100, when you come back to Europe, it might not be 100 no more. It'll be more like 65.
So when you went over there, did you have any? I mean, I know you've played against European players, whether probably in AAU ball and certainly in college, but now you're an American player, so everybody thinks you're better. Did you have any idea that when you played against Iranian guys or whatever else, like, man, I'm going to mop the floor with these guys? Or did you think, well, if they're here, they're probably pretty good?
It's just how I looked at it was, of course, our United States is much bigger and stuff like that, our population and diversity and everything. But I had that mentality here. So of course, when I went over there and it was only their kind, of people, and oh yeah, I just thought it was going to be too easy. Not from a standpoint of their talent level. It was more of a standpoint like I'm killing guys in America, whether black, white, Hispanic, South Sudanese, regardless, because we have all that diversity here. So if I'm coming over here, let's say Australia, I've never been to Australia. I mean, played in that league, but okay, yeah, now I'm playing against only Australians. I expect to have the same dominance.
Well, when you played against an Iranian or a guy from China, did they ever catch you off guard? Like, whoa, this guy's pretty good. This guy's nice. I like him.
My good friends to this day, we still keep in touch. Name is Arsalan Kazemi. He was drafted by last pick by the Philadelphia 76ers. He's 100% Iranian. He went to Rice University. I actually went to Iran. The only reason why I agreed to play there, I told him, hey, if I'm going to play with this team in Iran, you coming with me. Yeah, and he's, man, put him in China also. He's athletic, and then one of the other great bigs drafted to the NBA, Haddadi. I don't know if you know Haddadi, 7
I
foot.
know his name.
3, 7'2", played in China, one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid Iranian ever in the history. Like, he done played everywhere. Like, Iran has some great players.
Mm-hmm. I don't think I ever heard anybody say that.
The Grizzlies, I want to say Haddadi was.
That's where I heard from him. That's why I knew he was with the Grizzlies. Okay, so let me. I've got a few more questions to wrap this up. So I heard the story. So don't get mad at him. You were at the end of your career, and you got a phone call. Tommy Brackle, your high school coach at North Crowley, legend now, tells me the story that Keith Langford gave you a call.
Mm-hmm.
And Keith kind of went through a little bit what you went through in terms of he's a great college player. He flirts with the NBA, and then he goes overseas, and he really did very, very well. And then he retired, and I believe he lives in Austin now. But he gave you a call, Willie, to basically encourage you about where you were in your career, and not to get too caught up in whether or not you had an NBA career or not. That you did have a professional basketball career, and you made probably pretty decent money at it, and that's worth celebrating and talking about identity and things like that. Can you tell me what he said to you that encouraged you about being where you were and where you are?
It was the words also, but I was more of a seeing than believing person. So of course, him calling and saying those things to me, it encouraged me to keep going. Like, hey, if the NBA don't work out, and I can continue to pursue this dream. But it was the fact because I remember him telling me he came from the bottom, second, third division leagues and all that. But by the time I got to Europe, he was the highest paid American ever to come through Europe. So when I heard and I seen that, I was just like, okay,
So,
I believe you.
so what do you think of NCAA basketball now, Willie?
Man, I love it. I love it. I don't think it's had. I'm as far as the NIL portal and stuff. I hate it. I hate
Why?
it. The portal, like we said earlier, discussing that gaining that chemistry and that trust. There's multiple years that you grind and you sweat and all. I was in some treacherous off seasons with my guys when I was at Oklahoma, like especially my freshman year. That was tough for me. If I didn't have Blake, I always tell people if I didn't have Blake my freshman year, I don't know. That was different. That was a different type of work. I didn't have to work like that in high school to to win that we worked, but it wasn't like that to win that state championship. So just get that portal, guys, just in and out, 3, 4 schools in 4 different years. And, I don't like that. Like, it kind of disrupts the whole family brotherhood, I think, that came with, being on a basketball team.
So you talked about talking to go ahead.
Aggressiveness and everything. Oh, I love it. It's still the same. I tell people to this day that you need to watch college basketball over NBA and everything. If you want your child to learn basketball and learn how to play the right way, you go watch college.
Why do you say that? Because I'm sure you've seen this. The current NBA players are upset with the older NBA players who kill routinely the way the game is played today. And I'm a little tired of it too. Oh, it was so much better back in the 80s and the 90s. And I'm an 80s, 90s kid. And I'm here to tell you right now, it's not necessarily any better than it was then. Or the talent and the skill level of these players today is incredible. So you're a fan. What do you think of the state of NBA play today? An NBA game?
And you got people that's complaining about the physicality is leaving, and because we shoot 53s. If you drop 30 of those 3 downs and only shoot 23, you have 30 possessions where you get some more physicality, get some more fouls, and frustrated players of guys bumping them, and you might get that aggression that you need. But when you're shooting 53s, that's a lot of possessions.
But I have had multiple college coaches tell me the most over-recruited state by far in the nation is Texas. Do you think the best basketball players in the United States now are coming out of this state, or do you still think it's a predominantly East Coast thing?
I've never thought it was an East Coast thing. We've been the best. I led the McDonald's game in scoring. It's like
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
I've always felt like we've had the best players in this area. We play more simple, so it's not as pretty, it's not as flashy, it's not as like the East. That was the only difference. We're more gritty. We ain't scared to get in them trenches, get downhill, shoulder bump you, finish and one, yell, scream, dunk on you, and we not gonna come down here and put on a dribbling expedition and shoot sidestep, fadeaway threes all game, man. That was more, street ball. That's more East Coast, West Coast. We let them have that. We more of, all right, we hear you talking. When you pull up on us, though, you're going to feel us.
That's a great line. What do you tell young people who say, man, I want to go to the league. I want to go to the league. And they don't worry about education or any of that other stuff. They can't see beyond playing pro basketball and the rest of their life. What do you tell them?
What I've noticed when I got older, it wasn't what you learn in school is going to benefit you later. It's them preparing you for life. Especially if you're going to have a job and try to be successful in life, it's the being able to wake up and get to where you need to be on time, being able to get in between your classes, on being able to follow and listen to instructions from a superior, because everybody has a boss. It was the little things like that I didn't realize when I was a young one, that when I got older and was like, this is what we really were preparing for. It wasn't what you were doing in a science class. Like, man, I ain't finna be no. It wasn't that. It was being able to follow instructions to a T, being able to listen to someone, being able to get to where you need to be when you're supposed to be there, and being able to stick to a strict schedule. And it was all those little things that I didn't know that I would tell them, hey, it's a professionalism to it. When you make it to that NBA, like it ain't just basketball. It's a bunch of talent in this world, but if you can't be a professional, you won't last long. You might get there, but you won't last long. And if you want to last, if you want to stick, you got to separate yourself, and that professionalism is how you do it.
Wow. What a great answer. Seriously, my daughter's 16 and she's in that place. I'm sure you can relate to some of this with your son. Why am I doing this class? Right. And I have told her, and you kind of just backed it up a little bit. And I said, honey, you will separate yourself if you show up on time. Just show up on time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one. If you 2 minutes early, you'll separate yourself a little bit. If you're awake and you're engaged and you are trying, you will separate yourself a little bit more from the rest. I said, that's what you're learning how to do.
Yep.
I said, and if you can excel in that class, even better. But that's what you're learning how to do. And if you do those things, it is amazing how many people you will separate yourself from. Willie, I really appreciate your time. It's great to see you. Thank you so much. I know we yo-yoed back and forth on this for a while. But, Willie, congratulations for everything. I really appreciate it. I wish you all the success and continued good health. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you so much, man. I hope you have a great one. Thanks for having me.
You too. Thanks, Willie.
One shining moment you reach deep inside. One shining moment you knew you were.
This is a Stolen Water Media production.